Hello, everybody. Welcome back to more political chatter. Today, we will be talking about the 2026 Senate race in the state of Texas. Now, this is a race that has interested me really since its beginning, with Colin Allred, the former U.S. representative, getting into the race, but more so when James Talarico, the state representative from Austin, who has really gathered national attention for his skills on social media and during interviews, especially with conservative outlets. He's just a very different guy. He's a Christian pastor, and he really uses his faith in a way that we don't see from a lot of Democrats. He is in the race for, both of these men are in the race for Senate in Texas, and it appears more and more likely that Democrats could actually pick up this seat. And really, what I've expected in the Senate race as we move on through time in the Senate race is really coming to fruition. And that is that as more people find out, especially Democrats, is as more Democrats become familiar with James Talarico, instantly, the more support he will gain. I believe that as more people hear James Talarico speak and understand that James Talarico exists, I think that more and more it will boost Talarico's numbers, and we are seeing this. We are seeing this already in Democratic primary polling, with James Talarico just in a poll from that was released a couple days ago, back from taken on October 29th, finally shows Talarico for the first time in the lead in the Democratic primary between himself and Colin Allred, who was the nominee for Senate in 2024. And this is absolutely great news for the Democrats, because I think that, like this Democratic primary, like what we're seeing with more people becoming more familiar with James Talarico, I think it'll have a similar effect in the general election, where the more people hear, James Talarico and how he uses his faith to win elections, to be an electoral beast. I think as more people hear that message, he is going to pick up support even in the general election. But looking at this primary, this has not been James Talarico's race so far. He started off down 7 points. He wasn't even included in this Emerson poll. Then he was down 8. Then by 12 in this University of Tyler poll, and then it started to get closer, I should say. Then he was down by 4 in a University of Houston poll, and then in this new Impact Research poll, he has taken the lead of 6%, 48% to Colin Allred's 42%. I've been saying for a while now that, again, James Talarico, as more people hear his message, his support will grow. He is an electable candidate. He is a strong candidate. But not many people know his face or know his name yet. Colin Allred was the nominee for Senate in 2024. He was a U.S. representative. Every Texas Democrat knows who Colin Allred is. James Talarico still has to get his name recognition up, and it appears like he is doing that, and it is being successful in his electoral chances because he is increasing his tally in the Democratic primary. But this is so important to get James Talarico as the nominee in this race. It is so important for Democrats. I can't stress it enough. If Colin Allred is the nominee, whatever, we can forget about this race. It won't be close like it was in 2024. But in 2026, if James Talarico is the nominee, I'm willing to say that this would be a near toss-up race. Because at the same time as you have such a strong Democrat poised to be the nominee, that being James Talarico, at that same time, you have a horrible, horrible Republican on track to be the Republican nominee, that being Ken Paxton. Now, we have an incumbent Republican from Texas who is running for re-election. That's John Cornyn. In 2020, he won by a strong margin of 10%, outperformed Trump. He would be a pretty strong candidate, whether it's against James Talarico or Colin Allred. John Cornyn would probably be able to win. But for Texas Republicans, John Cornyn, I guess, is just not MAGA enough. So the very far right, very conservative Attorney General Ken Paxton has launched a primary challenge against John Cornyn. To make things even more complicated, Wesley Hunt, the U.S. representative, has also thrown his hat into the ring. Look at the polling averages right now. Ken Paxton is actually ahead against the incumbent senator from Texas, John Cornyn, by an average of 2.6% in Decision Desk and Real Clear Politics. Meanwhile, Wesley Hunt is right under 20%, an average of 19. So this will be a race to watch for sure. This will be quite an interesting primary. And it'll be one thing if Ken Paxton comes out as the nominee. That'll be detrimental enough. But regardless of who the nominee is, they will be weakened because this primary exists. What we're seeing in the Democratic primary is that James Talarico is on a rapid upward trajectory here, where he is gaining in every single poll. And it looks like by the end of the primary, it won't even be that close if this trend continues. What is that? Colin Allred might even be dropped out by the time of the primary next year. What does that mean? It means that they avoid a nasty primary. It is clear here already by the attacks that we're seeing from each candidate towards each other. All three are doing nasty attack ads against each other. John Cornyn for not being MAGA enough. Ken Paxton had an affair with a woman with like 10 kids. There's so much, scandal ridden background info about Ken Paxton. But whoever comes out as the nominee in this Republican primary is going to be damaged. This is a brutal, nasty primary, and whichever party's nominee comes out of a primary, anything like this already comes out with a disadvantage. So that'll be crucial looking at November, and it'd really be interesting, I think, if Ken Paxton is the nominee because and James Talarico is the Democratic nominee. So it would really set up that juxtaposition really nicely, where you have, now it's really the script is flipped here, where now the Democrat is using their faith as an electoral strategy, and that would really pair well. For James Talarico against Ken Paxton, if Paxton ends up as the nominee, because he is this very immoral, sort of guy who says he's Christian, but doesn't really live a faithful or moral life at all. And the fact that Talarico, the Christian, the moral man, would be the Democrat and Paxton being the Republican, that would really make things very, very interesting. I'd like to see how that ends up. So looking ahead to Texas, I think James Talarico is definitely on track to be the nominee. He has raised more money, millions more than Allred, despite having been in the race for months less than Allred has. So that's interesting. He's gaining in the polls. Who knows what will happen in the Republican primary, but Paxton leads right now. But this race really will come down to if James Talarico or Colin Allred, if he's the nominee, but probably Talarico, if Talarico can really remake what Beto O'Rourke was able to create in 2018. Because in 2018, Beto O'Rourke ran against Ted Cruz and he lost by 2.5%. This was an insanely close margin. Remember, this was 2018. The whole idea of Texas flipping blue, that really wasn't much of a thing yet. In Ted Cruz's first election 6 years earlier, he had won by 16 points. It wasn't even close at all. And 6 years later, remember, this is a Trump midterm now, it got reduced to 2.5 points. Now, since 2018, Texas's demographics have only become more favorable for the Democratic Party. Joe Biden lost the state of Texas by 5.5. And since then, we have seen a massive rightward trend in the state. It steadily trended towards the left for so long, so steadily, getting all the way down to a 2.5 margin for Ted Cruz in 2018, Beto O'Rourke losing. And then since then, we have seen a massive trend away, primarily fueled by Hispanic voters moving away from the Democratic Party. And this really adds a whole new dynamic into 2026 because things are a lot different. Not only, I think, would James Talarico have a massive appeal to the Hispanic bloc of voters, especially those who are Christian, but also the Trump administration is having a factor, or is playing a factor, on how these Latino voters vote in 2026. Trump obviously has taken a hugely aggressive stance on immigration, to say the least. Obviously it's a fascist take when it comes. They have a fascist policy when it comes to immigration. They have a fascist immigration policy, and what we're seeing is that Latino voters, despite a lot of them voting for him in 2020 and even or in 2024 and even 2020, 2025 showed us that they are actually moving back. We had New Jersey vote last night. Why did I say last night? A few nights ago, as well as New York City and Virginia. And what we saw were Latino voters turn back towards the Democrats. Maybe not all of them turned out, but the ones who did was overwhelmingly for the Democrats. This is what fueled Mikey Sherrill's win by an astonishing 13%. Nobody expected any margin like this. 13% for Mikey Sherrill there in New Jersey. And when you look at the counties that trended most towards the Democrats, it was the ones that are most diverse. Some of these counties and some of these towns are actually a plurality Hispanic. Okay, people forget about how Hispanic the state of New Jersey is. It is one of the most Latino and Hispanic states. But looking at some of these counties, you saw Hudson County. Now, this one is primarily African American, but you have a very affluent block of Latino voters trended 22 points more Democratic compared to 2024. In just 1 year, a county became 22 points more Democratic. Passaic County, a huge Latino population. As a percentage, I think Passaic is actually the most. Don't quote me on that though. Essex, shifted 9 points towards the Democrats. Union County, by 10. Union County, this is Brian Stack, mayor of Union City, turned out Latino voters in droves. Middlesex, 17 points more Democratic than 2024. Mercer, 8. Camden, 9. Gloucester, 7. Cumberland, 8. And then all the others less. Bergen by 7. And when you look at if we could go back here, if you look at 2024 and how the state of New Jersey voted, we could compare it to, it's basically a reverse. When you compare how, oh God, when you compare to how, New Jersey voted in 2025 and how it shifted in 2025, New Jersey, it's really been a reversal of what we're seeing. So what you're looking at now is the shift map from the 2020 presidential election to 2024. The whole state became enormously more Republican. This was one of the most rapidly trending Republican states in 2024. But where do you see the most trend towards the Republicans, towards Trump in 2024? Where do you know? It was Hudson County, became 18 points more Democratic, and Passaic County, which became 19 points more Republican. When you look at 2025 and the trend map here, what were the two counties that became the most leftward trending in 2025? Which two counties trended the most towards Mikey Sherrill, the Democrat, in 2025 compared to 2024? It was the same two counties. It was Hudson County, 22 points more D, and Passaic, 18 points more Democratic. 22 and 18. And those were the top two leftward trending counties. What do you know? When you look at 2020 to 2024, these were the two that trended the most towards Trump. What do you also know? These are some of the most Latino counties in the state of New Jersey. And, maybe in the nation too. These are hugely Hispanic counties. That Latino voters in New Jersey and in New York as well. In Queens, the Bronx, where they have the Bronx is plurality Hispanic. I'm pretty sure. Um, these counties also were massive. Look at those trends. Trump gained 21 points in Queens, 22 points in the Bronx from 2020 to 2024. These types of trends, massive blocks of Latino as well as primarily Latino voters in Texas, in New York, in New Jersey, in California, and in Florida, and a little bit of Texas too along the Rio Grande Valley. This is what fueled Donald Trump's ability to to claim for the first time the popular vote in 2024. It was these cities with massive blocks of Latino voters. So looking ahead to Texas in 2026. What we've seen from 2016 to 2024, or 2012 to 2024 even, is or I shouldn't do 2024, but more like 2012 to 2020. Remember, 2020 was Biden, 2012 was Obama. The state voted in 2012 for Romney by like 15 points, I want to say, or like 12 or something like that. This is the trend map from 2012 to 2020. To 2020. What you've got a spot of rapidly trending left counties around Dallas. Dallas became 16 points more Democratic between these 8 years. And then you have the suburbs that surround Dallas County. Tarrant became 16 points, Denton became 24, and Collin became 27 points more Democratic. You also see this around Austin, where Williamson became 23 points more Democratic, Travis 21, and Hayes 21. This is something that we see all across the nation. The rapid suburbanization of America, with Democrats from other states or liberal-minded people from other states moving into suburbs around these major cities in more red states. That's what happened in Arizona. That's why Arizona is now a swing state. That's what happened in Georgia. It used to be a Republican state, but more white people, white liberals, moved into the suburbs around Atlanta. That's why Georgia is now a swing state. Texas is now somewhat a swing state because of these four counties. Yes, it's only four counties, plus these Austin counties, but they are heavily, heavily populated counties, which is fueling this leftward trend towards the left. But what we're also seeing at the same time is the Rio Grande Valley counties, as well as these northwestern counties, with majority Hispanic voters here. Like literally, like these are the most Latino and Mexican American counties in the United States. These are the counties where we saw some of the largest trends towards the right in 2024. Look at 2020 to 2024. Starr became 21 points more Republican. Webb, 26. Maverick, 28. Some of these margins are just so insane. It's even more exaggerated when you look at 2012 to 2020. Some of these counties. Look at Webb. From 2012 to 2020 became 31 points more Republican. Or even more insane is 2012 to 2024. Just 12 short years. Webb County became, look at that, 56% more Republican. Zapata, 66. Maverick, 77% more Republican. How insane is that? And then it continues. Culberson, 48 points. Hudspeth, 36 points. Willacy, 46. Cameron, 36. Hidalgo, 45. Some of these are beyond belief. Duval, 64 points more Republican. So my point is, relating to 2026, is not, whatever. It is that James Talarico, number one, has to do with what Beto O'Rourke did with the suburban counties around Dallas. He needs to turn out those suburban wine moms, those white voters around Dallas in the suburbs. That is, the cause of this gradual leftward trend of Texas. But at the same time, he has to make these Latino voters in the Rio Grande Valley, in the southern portion of the state, return to the Democratic Party. With his faith being a major point of his campaign and the extreme anti-immigration policy of the Trump administration, that shouldn't be hard to do. It appears that he could do it. If he can do those two things, and Ken Paxton is weak enough of a candidate and he turns out as the nominee out of a nasty primary, James Talarico can absolutely win this race. So thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to subscribe down below. That really helps out. Drop a comment to let me hear what your thoughts are on this Texas Senate race, and I will see you all later.